You built the business. Now, build the man. This is the Ben Price Experience.
Hello and welcome to the Ben Price Experience. Today I have Keith Abram with me of Heroic Hearts. Welcome, Keith.
Thank you very much, mate. Thank you.
And Keith, who are you and why are you here?
I started the UK branch of the Heroic Hearts Project, which is initially an American charity. And our focus is to help British military veterans and emergency services personnel gain access to psychedelic therapy. And very briefly, the way that we achieve that, because of drug laws in this country, we have to take our beneficiaries either to Peru or to the Netherlands, depending on which psychedelic we are using. That's it in a nutshell.
Nice. We've had quite a few conversations about psychedelics and the sort of benefits, but do you want to give us the high level, just in case people don't understand what the benefits might be of psychedelics, who might benefit, and why perhaps you work with who you work with as well?
Yeah, I suppose I would focus more on the people that we work with our cohorts, because that's what I know best.
Mm-hmm.
But benefits of psychedelics aren't limited to those that are suffering from traumatic experiences. Perfectly healthy people can benefit hugely from going through a psychedelic experience. Myself and the organization that I'm part of, we focus on quite a narrow band of fisheries, and those are, like I said, the military veterans and emergency services personnel. Those that are, the way that I would describe it is that if there's a spectrum of suffering, and over here is someone that's absolutely fine, and someone here is very, very deeply unsettled with their mental health. We're interested in this band here, which is ranging from I'm suffering quite a great deal to I'm all right, but I could really do with a helping hand. And there might be things that I can't quite articulate, but something's not right. And I would love a little bit of help. We're in this section here. We don't really feel like it's the best use of people's donations to serve people that are over here. And then, unfortunately, I would love to try and help these people, but there are certain people with certain conditions and disorders that are not appropriate for psychedelic therapy. So, unfortunately, we can't provide services to those people.
What kind of conditions are not suitable for it?
Yeah, the more I would broadly describe them as the more extreme conditions that, that psychosis and personality disorders, and there are a whole host of conditions and disorders that are, for want of a better term, red flags for us. Right. But again, with all compassion and understanding, it's just not safe for those people to go through something like psychedelic therapy. And also it would probably be unwise for an organization to try and help those people with psychedelics as well. So we're very cautious, but also most of the team that I work with, most of my colleagues have decided to dedicate their professional life, their personal lives and professional careers to psychedelics and being in service to others with the use of psychedelics in whatever way their profession is, whether that's marketing or whether it's supporting someone through it. It's a testament to how much it has affected us all on a personal level that we have decided to commit our lives personally.
So yeah, tell me about that personal journey that you went on and how you arrived at this way. Because obviously you're a para, right?
I was a paratrooper, yeah.
Yeah.
I served in Iraq and Afghanistan in the summer of 2008, which we had quite a difficult tour. It was one of those, it's the duality of the experience. It was undeniably very difficult, but it was undeniably absolutely incredible. I suppose it's balancing those two things and acknowledging that. It was very difficult. After a while, after Afghanistan, I came to understand that actually I was exhibiting symptoms of distress, and that's the best way I could describe it at the time. And the traditional route for therapy for someone like me at that point, I found to be unsatisfactory. And I think I'm not alone in that. In fact, I know I'm not alone in that. Civilians there's plenty of evidence of civilian. This is not to the military or emergency services. The traditional, I should say what the traditional therapies are, just to make clear what I'm talking about, is talking therapies, be that with a psychotherapist or a clinician, and the use of SSRIs, which is antidepressants, things like sertraline. And while those two things work for a lot of people separately and as a combined form of therapy, there's a lot of people out there that it does not work for, and there's some where it actually makes things worse. I found that SSRIs made things worse for me. So while I gave them a fair crack, I tried 3 times, and every time I had the same consequences that were, I would rather have just suffered as I was than take them. So I stopped them. Wow. Talking therapy was beneficial, but talking therapy, again, much like SSRIs, is just trying to manage symptoms. Very rarely can we expect to find any sort of significant progress or dare I say it, a sense of healing from talking therapy. Mm-hmm. And certainly not from SSRIs. Whereas in some cases, psychedelics, by people's own testimony, is that they feel like they have either made significant progress where their life has been totally transformed. And then they may also use a word like healing. Mm. And that's a subjective description of their experience. But if they choose to say it,
yeah,
it's significant.
Yeah, of course.
It's more than you can achieve really through the more traditional methods. Mm. Like specifically the two that I mentioned.
So what happened when you were on SSRIs?
I was devoid of all emotion. Everything was just blank and meaningless, and I felt nothing. Our emotions are, while often difficult, our emotions are a bit of a gift. And I kind of intuitively always knew that, even when I was in the reg, when I was a paratrooper. If I say the reg, we term it that way. Okay. Yeah, I already kind of knew that I was quite sensitive and that it was actually a good thing. But when you're sensitive and you go to Afghanistan,
yeah,
it becomes less of a
useful trait.
A useful trait. So yeah, they just numbed me, and I didn't like that feeling. It was actively very unpleasant, and the talking therapies are just. You have to be very lucky to get the right therapist at the right time for you and what you want to try and get from it. And I was unlucky. There are lots of therapists out there that are amazing that can help people make lots of progress. I didn't meet them until later. And maybe that's, I wasn't able to engage in that form of therapy until after psychedelics, which is also reasonably common for that to happen, because you're better able to express yourself after a psychedelic experience. Often you feel more open to other possibilities, which is that's a problem when you're suffering and it hasn't worked before. Oh, I've tried talking therapy before, it didn't work, it's not going to work again. Whereas post psychedelics, chances are you might feel good. Yeah, you might want to give it a crack, and because you've got a deeper access to your emotions or a greater understanding of your psychology, or even if we say you might have embarked on a spiritual journey, all of these things, then if you start talking to someone, then threads can get pulled on and it can be very useful. By no means do I believe that psychotherapy or psychiatry or psychology are an absolute must for psychedelic therapy. I think there are some very, very deeply experienced, let's call them coaches or therapists, that can extract just as much benefit or more than a psychotherapist post psychedelic experience. But you can have them all as well. You can have a psychedelic experience,
go on all of it,
a proficient psychedelic coach, and a psychotherapist. Why not? Sounds great.
Yeah, I'm reading a Course in Miracles at the moment. Have you ever heard of A Course in Miracles? It's a channeled book, and it's pretty cool. It's quite heavy duty, but it's one of the things. So it's channeled through a psychologist, and so
who's the contact at the other end?
Who's sending the message? Well, that depends on your school of thought, I suppose. But I think she uses Christian language, though the book is not dogma or Christianity. So I think the voice is the Holy Spirit is the voice of God. Is how that's how they describe it.
That's punchy.
Yeah, or Jesus. It's either Jesus or the Holy Spirit.
Wow, and it's, what was it called? Something of Miracle.
A Course in Miracles.
I'll have a look.
Yeah, but the point I was going to make was that the highest form of spirituality and psychotherapy it's the same. They meet.
Yeah. Having embarked on a spiritual journey myself, thanks to psychedelics. Well, one, as a paratrooper, I would have revolted at your sentence. Oh, okay, mate, thank you. But having had experience of that myself personally, I find it fascinating. Whether anyone chooses to believe that it's real or how can I profess to it be real, but there's value in it for the reader, then it's great.
Well, I mean, the debate of whether it's real or not is just kind of go and experience it and see what you think, isn't it? Exactly. I would never have thought it was real if I hadn't had psychedelics, if I hadn't experienced psychedelics. So yeah, I'm open to experience.
It's kind of hard to deny the existence of the other.
Yeah, very
after you've had a big psychedelic.
And whenever, like, more or less anybody who has reached a high level of success in their life knows that there to be something greater going on. So that gives you clues too.
Yeah.
The more sort of successful people you work with, the more they talk about this stuff, even though maybe it's not so apparent on the outside. So when was your first psychedelic experience? Because you're obviously in the pits of depression and despair, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I was in a difficult spot. I wouldn't consider MDMA a psychedelic. So I did have MDMA as a medicinal therapy, but just privately with my friend. As within a few weeks of leaving the military, he sat me down in his kitchen and gave me some MDMA, and we just spoke all night, and I unloaded the big bergen on my back. I just left it in his kitchen, and it's still there to this day. I never picked that back up again. So that was incredibly valuable. I don't consider it a psychedelic. My first psychedelic experience was in the around Easter in 2014 in Peru, and it was ayahuasca.
That was the first time. Wow, cool.
Yeah, it was. I've told this story before, but I never share it for the purpose of thinking that someone should replicate my experience, because I don't think it's necessarily the healthiest way to go about having ayahuasca for the first time. Just because I didn't go to a retreat center, I got met by a mutual friend who I'd never met before, a mutual friend of a friend I'd never met before. They met me at the airport in Peru. I got in their car. They drove me for an hour downriver. We got in a boat together. We went upstream for an hour. I had to carry food and drinking water with me. And then we hiked up into the jungle for an hour.
Wow.
And they just dropped me off at a little wooden hut, which is called a tambo. And no running water, no electricity, no nothing. Just fruit trees and a river running past it. And it's just a little wooden hut, not even a toilet there.
Yeah.
And they delivered me there, and then they made their way back home the next morning. I spent the next 10 days there all on my own. A local maestro from the village that was by the river, he came and visited me twice during that week, or however long I was there. And he gave me ayahuasca, just me. So that, I don't say that because I think that's the best way for others to access ayahuasca. There's plenty of very, very good retreat centers out there, across the Amazon basin and the high jungles. So Ecuador, Peru, Colombia, Brazil, there are very good retreat centers.
So was that a dodgy experience, or was that just a very authentic way of...
No, it was magical. It's one of the great experiences of my life. The reason why it worked out so perfectly for me is because it's exactly what I wanted. I just wanted to be alone, to have some space, and just to sit in the river, let it wash over me, eat fruit from the trees, and then work hard when I got the opportunity. I was ready. So when the maestro came, I don't really use the word shaman because it's not a word that they would use. They call themselves maestros. So that's why I use it. So when he came, I was really ready to work very hard, and it served me really well. And that, if we just go back to Heroic Hearts for just an instant, really, all we ask is that people just work hard when they get the opportunity. And by that, I mean, just emotionally, it's hard work. Take your opportunity when you get it. And that's what I did. And it worked out really well for me. And we try and support people through that. How do we help them work hard? How do we make them feel safe and trust that we're trustworthy? It's a huge part of it.
So what's the difference between the MDMA? You said MDMA is not psychedelic.
Yeah, some people consider it to be. I just wouldn't class it that. And I'm not a scientist or a doctor or a researcher, so I can speak about how each one feels. But typically, if you have ayahuasca or you have magic mushrooms, if we just keep it very simple, just those two, or LSD, or you think of, or someone thinks of the things that they may have heard from psychedelic culture from the 60s, it's those sorts of experiences where there's vivid colors and visions, although to be fair, it's not always visionary, but often the case that you can go on these journeys into different realms, or you revisit experiences in your life, often from a slightly different perspective so that they're easy to manage. Some people, if they're struggling with an event in their life that was traumatic, the point of their suffering, they're very fearful and daunted by the possibility that the psychedelic therapy might make them revisit that. Of course, they're daunted by that. Of course, it makes total sense. But that's where the professional support helps them. And then their peer support. We find peer support is very important. But also helping them prepare that is a possibility. However, it's usually approached from a perspective where you can cope with it. It might be very difficult, but with that good preparation and that knowledge and support in the trust in the support network around you, you can manage it, and with a little bit of courage and hard work, you can confront it and dig around in it. And while it might be very, very, very difficult, at the end, we come out of it understanding that that's where the real gold was. It was revisiting that and digging through it and confronting it with a bit of courage.
Yeah, because a lot of people are worried about opening Pandora's box.
Right. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I felt the same way. Absolutely. And again, that's why, while I said there's lots of good retreat centers all over the world, in fact, also there are people that don't offer you that much support. And if it's a private business, which all of these retreat centers are going to be, they're going to be private. They're going to need to make profit to pay themselves, no matter how well-meaning and how good they are and how competent they are. They can only give so much in terms of support. Whereas us, we're not bound by that. We just give the best support, the best practice that we know, which is an extended period of preparation, and then an even more prolonged period of integration afterwards, and care and love and support on the retreat as well. So it's the whole package. It's not about just ingesting something. The most common form of failure in a psychedelic experience is when someone expects for all of the pain just to be taken away, and that it's a magic pill. Just please take it away from me. It's unlikely to work that way. It may feel like that in the moment and then immediately afterwards, but you have to put the work in before and after. You have to take responsibility for your own progress, your own healing. And if you don't, it normally comes crashing down again afterwards, which is why we spend so much time working through preparation and integration.
What sort of considerations are there if somebody's thinking they want to try magic mushrooms or they want to try one of these experiences? What are the preparations that one should make, or considerations that they should make?
Well, I can tell you what our practice is, but while highlighting that there are many, the private companies that form the retreats, that not many of them will provide this level of care. There are some, obviously there are some, but I think that people should be mindful of that, that there's going to be inadequate support often. No matter how good the retreat is, you need care before and after, and that it's often inadequate. So what do? We previously, up until recently, we had a 2-week preparation phase. It's now moved up to 3 weeks of preparation. And those are the 3 weeks immediately preceding the start of the retreat. During that 3-week period, we require certain restrictions to be in place. So there'll no prescription medication. You have to have come off your prescription meds and be clean from the start of the preparation phase. It's not about phasing it off through the preparation. You enter preparation clean of your meds. But that's the same with any street drugs, including alcohol, cigarettes, vaping, cannabis, especially with ayahuasca. Cannabis and ayahuasca do not like each other. Then we also go somewhat further and we restrict access to caffeine, sugar, oil. The oil in our diets is harmful. Obviously, we've got good oil. There are good oils, but there's a lot of bad oils, and it's causing us significant harm. So we like to extract all of those things and do a cleansing, a detox.
Yeah,
but it's not.
Sounds
it's
very
not
much like my 21-day detox process that I do every now and then.
Great. I mean, a cleaner system is only going to be beneficial to you.
You feel great.
It can be hard.
Yes,
as you all know. It's not just about the detox, though. While it's a large part of being clean, a big part is also those things are distractions, or they're crutches, or they're both. And we want people to come into this experience free of their distractions, or more free of their distractions and more free of their crutches that they rely on when they start to suffer acutely. You know, a very basic example would be, I'm feeling a bit down, I might have some chocolate. We all have our thing, whatever it is. Or I'm feeling a bit down, I'll go down the pub and have a few pints, that's the worst you can do, because alcohol is a depressant. So alcohol, when you're feeling down, is the very worst thing you can do. I'll just throw out some unsolicited advice there. But, you know, it doesn't matter what the thing is, it's that it's a crutch. And we want to remove those crutches so that one, you're clean going into the psychedelic experience, but also you've already trained your mind and your spirit, your will. No, I've managed 3 weeks free of this crutch. Then you go into the psychedelic experience, you come out the other side, that's 4 weeks free of the crutch and the distraction. And we ask for at least 1 week after for all of those to be continued. So that's 5 weeks. Plus you have the support of the psychedelic experience itself added to your knowledge that you've already done it 5 weeks for your own willpower. And we see a lot of people don't return to those crutches, like alcohol and smoking. Sugar and caffeine is harder. Many people can't wait to get back on caffeine. And, you know, to a degree, life's for living. No, not to a degree. Life is for living and enjoyment. But it depends on the why. Why must you get back on caffeine so quickly? That's a big question. That's a good question for someone to ask. Whereas I'm very grateful that caffeine was a problem. Thanks to this process, I don't drink caffeine anymore. And I'm very content not to drink caffeine. Same with alcohol. I've had significant issues with alcohol in the past. I don't drink alcohol anymore, thanks to this very process. And we've seen it work in others. I'm not just saying, yeah, I've done it, so everyone can do it. This is a common thread that we see.
Wow. I didn't know you really go to town on it. I love it.
Yeah, it's serious business, but you know, we love it as well. So there's joy, but it's serious.
Well, one of the things, so I touched on it. I did this 21-day detox process when I used to own the gym, and I kept on doing it because it's really powerful. I haven't done one for a while, actually, kind of due one, but it's 21 days. It's all the things you said. Basically, all you do eat is meat. It's easier to think of what you do eat. Meat, fish, nuts, seeds, fruits and vegetables, and that's it. So no oils, not even salt. Salt's actually one of the hardest things because, you know, food actually is quite bland without salt. Well, it's actually not, but you don't realize what it really tastes like because we put so much salt on it. I put so much salt on it, I should say. But then at the end of that 21 days, it's an optional thing, but You can do a 3-day fast. You've adjusted your whole system to be more fat adapted. But that 3-day fast is pretty like trippy. So if you were to take ayahuasca during that, I mean, wow.
Yeah, we don't advise, because some people come into the programs and they say, oh, you know what, I've heard fasting is also good.
Right.
But it's like, well, have you fasted before? No, I just thought I'd do it now because it seems like
you need to become, your body needs to get used to that. Yeah.
It's such a big event. You just need to give yourself a little bit of grace. Like you don't need to fast on top of this. In fact, you actually need your energy. So you need to eat. So
I've had people really like faint doing that the first time they ever do it, and not even the big fast, just the normal fast, or even just removing starchy carbs. Actually, to be honest,
again, it's serious business. Yeah. That's why we don't combine them.
Yeah. And then, so what happens or what happens during the experience, or is that a bit of a secret?
No, there's no secret. It would depend on. Shall I just use the ayahuasca retreat as an example?
Well, you do 2 different ones, right? You do the mushrooms in
the Netherlands, and they're only slightly different, but the program remains the same, except for the way that ayahuasca works with the brain. The way it's received into the brain is that you can keep drinking it, the receptors won't turn off. But in a lay way of putting it, for psilocybin, after a certain amount of psilocybin, the receptor will turn off. So if this is trying to deliver the psilocybin, and this is the receptor in the brain, after a large dose of psilocybin, the receptor will turn off for 24 hours, and you have to wait for it to come back on again, and then you take more psilocybin. So with that in mind,
on
the psilocybin retreats, we do 2 ceremonies, but there's a night in between. For ayahuasca, we do 3 ceremonies all back to back, which that is punchy. For a lot of people, it's hard. It requires a lot of courage to do 3 ayahuasca ceremonies back to back. And, but it's very powerful. So there are other things that happen on the retreat, but ultimately it comes down to, you need to try and relax and try and understand what's happened to you, how you feel about what's happened to you, try and express yourself to your peers, see if they can't support you, ask for more support from the staff, and just rest. You're in the jungle, even being in that much, it's just crammed with life, plants and trees and animals. It's a medicine all by itself, just being in the jungles. So just allow yourself to be in the jungle.
Yeah.
But there are other little things that happen. But the big thing is the 3 ayahuasca ceremonies in a row. And then really it's about, we already start talking to them about how are you going to maximize the benefits from this, which is what are you going to do about it? And that starts from the morning after the first retreat, and it carries on, and it might carry on for years after that. You have to keep going. Taking responsibility.
What do you mean? Okay.
Yeah, you have to take responsibility. You keep having to. The imagery that I would use is that I think someone once described it as a fresh dumping of snow on a mountain where there previously was lots of ski tracks, but you get stuck in the tracks and you only go down the mountain in the tracks that have been made before, right? That's a description of a habit. But psychedelics would dump a heavy snowfall on it, so you can choose wherever you go. You can go in any sort of direction after that. That's a good image. But what can happen is that you can still slip into less healthy habits. And so we need to make sure that through our own responsibility, we stick to the habits that are healthy for us, the self-care practices, the diets, whatever the diet is healthiest for us. We certainly don't dictate a diet to anyone. We dictate the restrictions for the sake of the therapy program. But going forward, we're all adults. You do as you see fit. And if you choose really unhealthy habits, you're not going to extract maximum benefit, right? But so you have to take responsibility for yourself. And that is in the shape of daily, possibly potentially hourly check-ins with yourself to make sure that you're making the right choices for yourself, especially in the early days after the ceremonies themselves, because everything's so clean in the brain and it's ready. The neural pathways are ready to bind and cement themselves in place. And if you're strict with your discipline, those neural pathways will be really strong, but they'll be the healthy pathway. They'll be healthy habits, and they they get locked in, and then you're well down the path of progress, right? You're making significant progress at that point.
Cool. Wow. If I didn't want to try ayahuasca before, I definitely want to do it now.
As long as everyone understands what some of the consequences of ayahuasca as well as the purging. It's a purgative.
I wasn't going to talk about that, but we can talk about that.
I mean, it's responsible that we do because it's a reality, right? And people can be daunted by it as well. And it's, there's often lots of vomiting, and it's often hard vomiting as well. The deep retching, because you've got to get something out of you. You might need to go to the toilet a lot. People think that, they're just going to lay there and should have diarrhea in their trousers and stuff. I've not seen that. Everyone seems to make it to the toilet.
Right.
So that's most people's fear is that they're going to do that.
Just lying there shitting themselves.
Everywhere. And they are throwing up everywhere, but into a bucket.
Yeah.
But we've never seen anyone just laying there, I haven't at least. And if they have had an accident, there are showers that we just throw them into the shower and just rinse them down, and they come back into the ceremony and they're ready to go again. So the other thing that happens on an ayahuasca retreat, on one of our ayahuasca retreats, just because we use this particular tribe called the Shipibo tribe, it's quite a well-known tribe. They insist on what's called a vomitivo in preparation for ayahuasca. So before ayahuasca, kind of at the start of the retreat, you drink lots of lemongrass tea, lots of maybe 6 or 8 pints of it until you are forced to projectile vomit. So it's a cleansing of the system again through vomiting, and it's called a vomitivo, which is a great name. So there's lots of puking on ayahuasca, as long as everyone understands it. And it's worth noting again just how difficult this can be. It can be extremely difficult, so it shouldn't be taken lighthearted. It's our responsibility to just try and convey just how difficult it can be. But again, we take great care in the professional support that we offer, but also curating the group that forms peer support. And we find that everyone's fine in the end. It's hard, but everyone gets through safely, and having felt that some benefit has been extracted from it. And plus you have the benefit, you have the benefit that you can glean from the indigenous healers that host the ceremonies, and from the retreat center staff that are our colleagues, but that they've put through, I wouldn't be surprised if they've maybe put through 1,000 veterans through the retreat center that we use. I'd be shocked if there was a retreat center anywhere in the world that had served more military veterans than the place that we use, because the Americans go there from our organization. We go there, and there's a lot of people gone through that retreat center, and believe there's more experienced staff anywhere in the world for the military and emergency services.
So now we've talked about the throwing up, and that's out there. Why is it worth? What sort of things have you seen happen from people who've gone through it?
I have seen, I've been brought to tears mostly every retreat that I've been on, and even the ones that I don't join, because I don't go on every retreat. Even the ones that I haven't, when I've spoken to them afterwards, they've brought me to tears just because of how they feel and how they've expressed themselves. Alcoholism gone. Hasn't been, I speak to this particular person I'm thinking about regularly, no issue with alcohol. That has now been, I think, 3 years. So that in itself is a great blessing. I've seen people resolve the guilt around not being able to stop a loved one committing suicide, killing themselves, which is that's a heavy burden from, I don't know it personally, but I've seen it a few times, and that's a terrible burden. That has been put down. That burden has been put down. Home life. One of the most wonderful things that always seems to go under the radar is that when we get home, we're actually a better dad, or a better mum, or a better husband, a better wife. That there's also something that I would like to comment on there actually, is that the ones that we leave behind, our wives or our husbands, actually we are trying to develop part of our program that helps the spouses, because we're aware that they might be traumatized by our trauma, by living with us for so long with trauma, that they're traumatized by us. So our guys come home they're like, you know what, I don't think I have PTSD anymore. Let's say that's how they feel. I think I'm really good. And then the wife or the husband is it's like, wow, that's amazing. That's great. But you know what? I've just,
or even they are expecting you to get triggered by something, but then, so they're bracing.
Right. Yes.
Situations.
Very common. Very common. And it's unsettling, and they deserve access to this as well. So the Americans actually do already help spouses. I say the Americans, I mean Heroic Hearts. We don't have the funding for that yet, but we're building that into our sort of budget, if you will, because they deserve it as much as we do. They've put up with our shit for, however long, decades in some cases.
Yeah.
And they're traumatized by us, by living with us. They have every right to access this just as much as we do. But having said that, also, when we get home, many accounts that I hear is like, wow, I love my kids. Whereas before they might have said, oh, my kid just driving me insane.
Yeah.
And then a completely different relationship. And sometimes we've heard comments like, oh, my real dad's back, things like that. And then immediately my tears start coming. I personally got a letter from someone's wife thanking us, which was lovely. I don't know how she got my home address. It was delivered to my home. So she's a sneaky one, clearly. But yeah, it was lovely just to read this letter about the guy that we'd sent through. It's lovely. It's the most meaningful work I've ever done. And I loved my career in the military. It was deeply meaningful. But this is levels above.
It's the real shit.
Yeah.
Very good. So how many have you taken through the program so far? And
we just did it in April this year was our 6th. So not many. Right. But so I started this in terms of administrating it and trying to build it. I started it probably a few weeks before COVID hit.
Oh, okay.
So while I was, we had a small team, we were making progress. I think we might be able to do a retreat. COVID had already hit, but we didn't know it was going to be that big. So we had the first 2 years was just, in terms of operations, it was a non-event. Hence, we've been running for nearly 7 years now, but we've done 6 retreats, and that's just the limit of the funding that we've been able to access.
Okay.
But 6 is great because all of those people have made great progress, or
there's
very nearly.
Ripple effect as well, right? The ripple effect. One person doing that, what the effect is on their family, on their kids, on the kids' kids, on the family's friends.
Yeah. And we find that the waiting list grows after each retreat because someone obviously starts speaking to their friends and they apply. So it comes down to trust. You just need to trust this because, well, no, you don't need to trust it. We try and build trust. We have to earn trust. But if it's all well and good me saying, you can trust Heroic Hearts. Of course I would say that. But if your dear closest friend that you know was really suffering and that you're suffering as well, but you see that he's doing so well now, trust comes with that, really. And then they can describe the program to their friend in a language that's appropriate for their relationship. And then they might say, you know what, that does sound like a good program, like a comprehensive program, which we try to be as comprehensive as we can. And they give us our trust then,
Yeah. When something I wrote down earlier, I think a lot about initiation, tribal initiations, how that we, as in the West, we don't have initiation for men. We don't have a rite of passage for men to follow. My understanding is psychedelics is a part of most traditional, not all, but a lot of traditional initiation. Do you have any insight into that? Is it like what age are they taking?
Yeah, I don't really have, I couldn't speak with too much authority. They do, but it's a completely different culture. And a young man that's been brought up in the Shipibo tradition, he might reach an age of maturity at a different point to someone from the UK, something like that. So, and then the use of psychedelics on the juvenile brain is up for debate. So I'm hesitant for that, even though I can see where you go with that, it could help. But also that I am very cautious about that as well.
What do they do in the tribe?
I wouldn't want to say because I couldn't really speak with much authority. They have a different lifestyle to us, and they've been raised with the knowledge of this and that it's normal. Whereas that is not the case with someone from like South London where I grew up. So I don't think we can probably take a young man from South London and just then say,
no,
we're going to initiate you with ayahuasca. You know,
no. Just curious.
But even with mushrooms,
yeah,
it's such a big thing that I think it needs to seep deeper into social consciousness before this, and more clinical research needs to be looked at the adolescent brain, but then how are you going to get that without giving it to them? So it's hard, and I can't really comment with any authority on that because it's morally that.
Yeah,
no. Even though I believe that young men do need something, really do need. They've been left behind. There was a period of time a few years back where we very rightly focused on young girls and how can we make the lives of young girls healthier and better. And I hope it's had some positive impact. I have a young daughter myself, but the boys have been left behind, and we create dramas we all create dramas when we're unhealthy, but we can tend to violence. We can lean towards violence and destruction, perhaps more than girls. And so it will serve society if we can raise young men up and help them understand that it's probably natural to be angry and to lash out, to feel like you want to lash out as a young man. It always felt very natural to me, but that trying to help them understand that is probably not the answer to the questions that we've got. Is that violence is not anger is fine. How do you process your anger and try to restrict the use of violence is a huge question for us as a society. Again, I don't know if psychedelics is the way that we achieve that.
I think drop little vials of mushrooms all over the country and just have them freely available and see what happens, because it's better than alcohol. Imagine that. Imagine just airdropping mushrooms everywhere.
Alcohol is poison, admittedly, but this psychedelics is serious business, and you don't want a large dose of psychedelics without being prepared correctly. But at the same time, alcohol needs to be looked at.
But and I hear that, and I understand you taking it seriously, and I respect it. And even if that was to happen, it's better. Surely that's better than getting really, really drunk and like having a fight with someone. Because I've never felt like fighting anyone when I've been on mushrooms.
No, I can see your point, but how I would challenge that would be you don't know what the underlying mental condition of a person is, and if they come across mushrooms and they are not appropriate for mushrooms, that may turn things very, very dark very, very quickly. So it's not appropriate for everyone.
So we can't just drop it across war zones and just be like, there you go, everyone, free mushrooms for you. Here's some
people are looking into the effects of psychedelics on serving soldiers, active duty soldiers. But I think that's been looked at. Active duty, yeah.
I'm sure that's going to make everyone peaceful and not wanting to go to war.
Yeah, I have. Well, if you want to explore it, I've got some thoughts on it. It depends what we're talking about with active duty, because you can be a logistics driver and be active duty. You can be a signaller and be active. Yeah, you can be all of these. Let's put it in the context of Ukraine and test it there. This is just my position, right? I'm happy to be proved wrong or debate it. If we were to use, so Ukraine has a manpower problem compared to Russia, even though Russia has a fuel problem and can't deliver its men to the front. So both sides have a significant problem, and Ukraine are doing very, very well with their drone policy. But if we just look at it as if it's just a conventional war without drones and stuff like that, and that there's two groups of men at an opposing end of the battlefield trying to kill each other, But then you've got the other echelons going steadily rearwards. My argument, where I would be willing to discuss this, would be that it might be useful for a signaler or a logistics driver who has seen, heard, experienced in any way, whatever their subjective experience is, that it's been traumatic, which I think everyone in Ukraine is traumatized at this point. Those people having access to something like MDMA, let's say, or even mushrooms, but with the care package that I've described, not just giving it to them and hoping for the best. But
Not my idea.
I would argue strongly against that. That a curated group of unit cohesion. Unit cohesion is important from what I understand of combat. So if you experience combat with a particular group of people, it's often pretty useful to try and resolve some of those things, possibly with the same people. So I would offer, it might be interesting to do group therapy with MDMA, retaining unit cohesion, far withdrawn from any form of, obviously far, perfectly safe environment, maybe even in another country. That I'm not against. So they're active duty and they're engaged in war, but I don't think the impacts of psychedelics would negatively impact their ability to do their jobs and conduct.
No. Yeah. No, I was thinking more about giving it to the people who decide to go to war.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I'm all for that. So then the problem that I would have is that active duty infantry personnel on the front line in the trenches, my argument is that they should not have access to psychedelic therapy until they have been permanently withdrawn from combat duty. Permanently. So not R&R, nothing, because you can't extract them from the front line. However far back you go, give them psychedelics, even if it's just MDMA, and then say, oh, by the way, you got another 2 weeks R&R and then you're back on the front. That person will be a liability in combat operations because he or she might not have the necessary drive to do what's necessary. I'm trying to be discreet. They might not, and me as their team member to their right and the other person to their left rely on that person being able to do their job.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, for sure. I would agree with that. If it was me, I would be the last thing on earth that I'd want to do.
Yeah.
But, and I would still do it if I had to.
Afterwards would be, I feel like, again, taking into account that not everyone.
Then go on an ayahuasca trip to clear myself out. Yeah.
Yeah. But obviously, once it's all finished and with correct enough space afterwards to just, I don't know, do whatever needs to experience your suffering.
Yeah.
Possibly, no matter how horrible it may be, and then engage with the healing process, however that might appear to you. But it can't be done.
So is this a serious ambition that you have to do some work in places like that?
I've debated it myself already, to groups that were willing to listen. I wrote a paper on it. I didn't publish it in the end because it wasn't received. So I made that argument that I've just made and it wasn't received so well. I stand by it.
Who by it? By who? Who's reading?
Just collectives
scientific bodies or?
Yeah, clinicians, and they have valid arguments. They really do. I'm not trying to dismiss them. I won't go into who they are. They have valid arguments. Just that's the point of having different positions. Is that I can understand your position, but I stick by mine.
Yeah.
And ultimately, they held the decision-making positions. And
yeah, well, it's tough, isn't it? Because it's like you're coming from a fairly rogue place or a rogue.
Yeah,
it's rogue. It's a little bit. It's out there a bit, isn't it?
Yeah,
and it's still considered to be a Class A legal substance.
Well, the Ukrainians are very well. When I was last engaged with them, they were very interested in the possibilities. But I feel like the clinical model has got a vice-like grip on psychedelics, and I feel like Ukraine might have been. This was my position also. I feel like Ukraine would have been better served by the non-clinical model. And the retreat model may work better for them. But it's when you're confronted by lots of clinicians with lots of clinical evidence, it's very compelling for someone that doesn't know the subject a little bit deeper, specifically when we're talking about combat veterans.
Mm.
Whereas we have a lot of experience in our organization internationally. And I would love it if, so to give you an experience, our lead coach in our organization, he has probably coached, I would say maybe certainly over 500, probably over 600, maybe even more military veterans and emergency services personnel through psychedelic experiences. That's a lot of people that he's served.
Mm.
No one has ever contacted us to speak to him when they're designing psychedelic studies for military veterans. I just think...
Is that because he's not got a piece of paper with the right...
Yeah, he doesn't have any... He hasn't... Yeah, he's just worked for years at doing this.
Just got experience, that's all.
Yeah. And so I'm kind of resentful on his behalf. But why is no one asking for your advice when they're setting up a clinical trial involving veterans and psychedelics? Just seems like you have more experience than any of these clinicians and psychotherapists, any of them, possibly even combined. That's how many he's served. And I hope he doesn't. I hope he's not going to listen to this because he likes to remain humble and below the radar.
Maybe that's why they don't know about him.
Yeah, but they know about our work and they could ask. In fact, to be very honest, a pharmaceutical company has recently contacted us to ask for our advice. So at least one has. But I would love it. It's not a veteran-specific one, whereas I know of veteran-specific ones that are being built and they aren't asking for his advice.
So what is your grand vision? What is your your grand vision, your 10 years time? What would be amazing to happen?
Free legal access to psychedelic therapy in the UK in a retreat setting if you desired it, and a clinical setting if you preferred it. In a clinic, if you prefer it, if you feel that that's safer, you should have that right. Absolutely. I wouldn't argue a split second if that's what made you feel safer. But if you felt like being in a clinic isn't the most comfortable setting for a psychedelic experience, you should also have the right to access it in a retreat setting among your peers. Having said that, I believe that's inevitable. Well, the clinical model is inevitable. I think that would be flawed if it was restricted to only the clinical model. I think there would be significant problems with it. But even if we did get the clinical and the more natural setting free and legal in the UK, I would still, if I had anything to do with the organization, I would always offer the retreats in Peru just because it's the jungle. That's where ayahuasca belongs. No, that's not the word. That's where ayahuasca comes from, and the jungle is healing in its own right.
Just adds like another layer to the experience.
Just adds a deeper layer to the possibilities for healing. And I don't actually believe that ayahuasca, I think it's a long, long way into the future that ayahuasca is available, even clinically here in the UK, just because it's a recipe. It's made and two different people can make it differently. Whereas mushrooms, you just make sure that you have the same strain of mushrooms and use that. And MDMA is made in a laboratory. LSD is made in, so you can control it. It's not a recipe. It's a compound. Whereas ayahuasca can change, and therefore it's for the clinical model. That's really hard you have to make sure you're getting the same thing exactly every time. And you can't really do that with ayahuasca. Hence, I think it's much further down the line than anything else. But that's my grand plan. That's what we're working towards as an organization. And the Americans have already achieved some of that as well. Psilocybin is obviously available in the certain US states. It's not free, but they don't have an NHS, whereas we do. So psychedelics on the NHS, free and legal here in the UK.
Imagine the benefits. That'd be unreal. What help do you need to make that happen?
For all non-profits and charities, it's money. It's money. We have great staff. We've got a very good program that we offer. We just don't have the money to do any more. So it's a question of money, really. So if there are any people so inclined out there, feel free to get in touch.
Is there anything beyond money that would be useful?
I suppose we're entering into certain partnerships where I suppose you would label it as education, but not with outreach. So it's just providing more information to interested parties. We're keen to do that, and we've found someone that we believe can provide that, but not just clinical, not just research papers, because our prospective beneficiaries they don't really care that much about the research papers. They just their friend has convinced them that this is safe and effective, and they just want to have a deeper understanding of it, and which we try to provide already, but we're aware that we can do more. But again, we're aware of that gap, and we're already working towards filling it. So and we believe in the program and the space and capacity to conduct more programs in each calendar year. It's just a question of paying for the program and the running of the organization.
Nice. Awesome. Is there anything you feel like I should have asked you that I didn't ask you?
No, I think I spoke about all the things that I actually wanted to anyway. So yeah, you allowed me to voice my thoughts. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. And if anyone would like to connect with you, obviously Heroic Hearts will be easily searchable.
Yeah, Heroic Hearts UK, unless you have listeners in America, of course, and then there's the Heroic Hearts.
I don't think I have any listeners. I just pretend I don't have any, and then I can say what I want. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, if you're in the UK and you're a military veteran,
yeah,
or you've worked or do work in the emergency services, which we consider to be the police, the fire brigade, or paramedics, then please get in touch. The website is heroicheartsuk.com. You can apply to join the waiting list through the website, and then you sit on the waiting list until we have the retreat booked. And then everyone on the waiting list gets informed that there's a retreat. It's these dates. It's in this location. It's using this psychedelic. Do you want to apply for this specific retreat? And they say yes. And they start the screening process. And if it's no, unfortunately, they have to wait. They sit on the waiting list until the next one. So, and it's growing. The waiting list is growing. So we've got room to.
Yeah, good. I assume people can pay if they want to pay. Or they just make a donation of something.
Yeah, they can make a donation, of course. But again, we do remember that spectrum of spectrum of suffering, isn't it? Spectrum of experiences that we're here. So if someone's got the money to pay for a retreat, but they're over here, we'll try and figure out a way to find money to serve these guys here, unless this person can afford to pay for everyone to go, and then we can talk about bringing them on.
How many people go on a single retreat?
10. We stick to 10.
Okay.
We have 10 participants, 2 of our staff, 2 of the retreat center staff, and then there's 2 maestros that host the ceremonies on the retreat.
Right, cool. Well, I don't mind saying this on podcast. I was going to wait until I'm off, but I would like to potentially organize something for the guys who I work with. Not all of them are veterans, obviously. So if we can find something where we sponsor half the retreat, and I'd like to do that as a
amazing.
Yeah.
It's very kind. Yeah.
Right. If it's an option.
I'd be very happy to speak to you about that.
Yeah. All right. Love it. Sweet. Let's talk offline. Because I definitely know there are people in my community who would like to experience something, and they keep asking me whether I'll organize something. So it feels like the right, who better to be in partnership with than the expert.
Well, I'm glad you think so.
Yeah. Well, that's clear.
I'm very happy to speak about it.
Okay. Sweet. And I think that's it. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to me, mate. It's been great. Thank you.
Cheers, Keith.